if you're a Marxist, you have to find another cloak in which to hide yourself. And Elaine Dewar is a wonderful Canadian writer, has written this Cloak of Green. And the Cloak of Green is the environmentalism on top of the Marxism. I'm not 100% sure whether Marxism is the right word to use, but it's the closest I can come. But anyway, these are well known. There's nothing in this that is not known already. But for example, Morris Strong, who was a very strong, one of the founders of the environmentalist movement, at some point or another said, we're using up too many resources, we need to destroy civilization, or at least we need to really whomp it down. Well, that's kind of now neo-Malthusianism. And it's the belief that we are running out of resources that's not sustainable. That's the key term. Paul Ehrlich, for example, he wrote Depopulation Bomb in 1968 and predicted that by the end of the 1990s, half the world would be starving, or a quarter of the world would be starving. None of this has ever happened. None of these Malthusian predictions have ever occurred. And just for those of you who don't know who Malthus is, Malthus was a clergyman in about the late 1700s who somewhat correctly predicted that as population rises, we use up the available agricultural land. Eventually the land isn't available to support the number of people that have arisen, and the population crashes. And this has been happening over and over and over again in history. And he was right historically to some, yeah, of course he was, but he was wrong in terms of our ability to, during the Industrial Revolution, to completely change our technology and our society and our culture in order to become innovative and, in a sense, progressive in the good sense, not progressive in the bad sense, but in the good sense, so that we were able to actually meet the challenges of a rising population by producing better agriculture, by industry, by finding better ways of doing things, cheaper ways of doing things. And it produced the Industrial Revolution, which was awful for many people, but it was better than apparently what they had before, because people flocked to the cities from the farms, even though they kind of knew that it was a horrible place to be and they would be overworked, but it was still better than what they had. So anyway, Malthus was overall proved wrong by human ingenuity and adaptability. And we are facing crises now. It's not a wrong argument to say that we have to be aware of the fact that our resources are not infinite, but also to deliberately kind of chop our own legs off economically to somehow or another, in some kind of intellectual way. And it's intellectuals behind all of this, by the way. I am one, I think, but I'd like to say I'm on the right side of this thing, but intellectuals are really often very, shall we say, impractical, and so on. But anyway, the idea that we are going to consciously sort of chop our civilization down, we're going to get rid of the fossil fuels, we're going to get rid of capitalism, we're going to find some kind of balance of a kind of an agrarian, small town, small village society in the future, where people will do handicrafts and take in each other's laundry and so on, which is more or less what they're talking about. I would rather take the chance. I'd rather assume that we can continue with a Western civilization that more than any other civilization in the history of the world has made people better off, has made them happier, has made them healthier. It may not have made them happier, by the way, but it has made them healthier. We're living longer, we're living better, we're eating. Even poor people are eating better than they used to. And this is the system we want to take down? It makes no sense at all. I would rather keep going. Let's take our chances. Let's adapt to things as they come along and see what happens. And if we discover that we've hit the wall, which is what they're saying, well, we're going to hit it further down the road than now. So maybe we'll be wealthy enough to actually, okay, we have to go back a bit, but not too much. We're adaptable. They're the only species that lives in every habitat on Earth, including the North, not Antarctica. But even there we have a toehold, I guess. But we're the most adaptable creatures on Earth. A Victorian thinker called Thomas Macaulay, who I quote extensively in my False Alarm book. He wrote a critique of a poet, the poet laureate of England, called Robert Southey. And Southey had written a piece in which he interviews Sir Thomas More, the man for all seasons he was called in the movie. And Thomas More is saying, oh, the world is terrible, the industrial system is awful, people are struggling and dying, and it's a horrible situation. And Southey's point was, and he was interviewing him under a guise of somebody called Montesino, he was saying, yes, we've got to go back to the times when it was better, like the time of Henry VIII, in the late 1500s. So it was a kind of a total reactionary, and Macaulay just demolished him. And one of the ways he demolished them is he said, well, take a look at the tables of mortality, the death rates. The death rates are falling. It's impossible to believe that people's lives are getting worse when they're living longer. It just doesn't work. And at one point in an address to students, I think at Oxford or one of the colleges, he said, why, when we look at nothing but progress behind us, would we see nothing but despair ahead of us? It just makes no sense. So our job is to, I think, be optimistic, is to look forward, to anticipate that things are going to get better, to take a very close look at problems. For example, climate change is currently happening, and the planet is currently warming, and that's a good thing, because if it wasn't warming, then we're heading back to an ice age. And that's kind of where we're heading if you look at the overall planetary picture. But we should be looking ahead